Hi, Christina Maria Gadar here with Open Access Pilates Archives, and today I would like to discuss Pilates handles, both the types of handles you can purchase from manufacturers today, as well as tips on how to find your own pair of vintage Pilates handles like the ones Joe and his students used back in the day. Now, Joe was a genius inventor, but he didn't reinvent the wheel when it came to handles. He basically used what was readily available, using handles from wall pulley systems and chest pulls, chest expanders, and wall pulls. So I will go over some tips on how to find vintage handles on the second half of this video. First, I'm going to talk about the handles you can purchase today from equipment companies all over the world. These are my Gratz handles. These were popular in the 90s and early 2000s. Half moon shape, metal, wooden dowel, a clear rubber covering for a little more comfort. I've always had a good relationship with these handles. They don't bother me. You keep your wrists nice and straight. One tip I give sometimes to my students is if you hold a little closer for things where you're extended for a long time, like the 100 on the reformer. If you hold the inside corner, that can also be very helpful. It's less pressure on the outside of the wrist. But of course, everyone is different. So what's great is that Pilates equipment manufacturing companies have a lot of options for us. So one of the things I did early on for the one student in over 22 years of teaching, I had one student who could not handle those hard metal handles. So I purchased these soft leather handles for her. Honestly, they're my least favorite handles because, as you can see, you lose a lot of tension. I don't know where I purchased these from, but even if you were to get, some that were with shorter leather, you would still have leather stretching over time. So while these were a good fit for that one student of mine who was extra sensitive, I eventually moved her over to the hard half moon handles using these fuzzy coverings. These are from Gratz. And these were wonderful because she wasn't distracted by any discomfort and she was getting the appropriate amount of resistance as well. I generally keep these on my armchair. I find them especially useful for doing the hug. So I find that sometimes can be uncomfortable without the fuzzies, and so this eliminates that as well. So these are great. My favorite handles for the reformer are the ones that were really popular in the 80s. This is by Gratz as well. Wooden dowels, metal, but it is in a more like a trapezoid shape, and it also has the clear rubber covering. These just fit the hand perfectly. They touch the wrist in just the right spot. All of my students find these to be wonderful handles. I love them. They're my favorite, and I keep them on the reformer. Now, a lot of manufacturing companies of Pilates equipment are starting to make these Reproduction archival handles, which is great. But when I first got them, I didn't realize how to use them. There is a different way of using them, of turning your wrist. So I had only kept them on my arm springs on the Cadillac and used them only for exercises done lying down in the supine position on the back. Now, since doing Open Access Pilates Archives, when you look at something and really study it, it's different. It's easy to look, but if you really study it, like I did with the standing arm springs done by Joseph Pilates and George Hoyningen-Huene, I discovered things like the way George would flip his wrists when going above and below shoulder level when doing arm circles. That was a great hack for being more comfortable and not having the wire press into my wrist. I also noticed in the film footage of a student doing the arm circles on the armchair that he did them with his palms facing each other, going up the midline, and then palms facing out when circling the circumference of the circle. So those were great hacks, and now I'm super comfortable with these handles. I rotate them all over the studio: pedal pull, armchair, standing arm springs at the end of the Cadillac or guillotine, the reformer. They're absolutely wonderful everywhere, and now I know how to use them. So that was really important. Now we get to hunting for vintage ones. So I'd seen this interview with Ken Engelman, And I did feature his original reformer and Divana apparatus on my equipment archive for open access. But in the photographs for the reformer, he didn't show, he held out on those handles. So what he showed in the interview though were these red handles. So they look like this, but with the red handles, red enamel finish and the grooves. So that's what I wanted to find in this shape, and it was not easy. So let me take you through some of the things, some of the search words you might find helpful. One of the things I found was this hand grip, which is really cool. I'm not sure who makes it. I want to say it might be Whiteley brand. And it's really, really hard for a hand of this size, but I have a student who used this when he was a football player. So it's a cool conversation piece, but it got me just a little closer in my vintage hunt for the archival handles. I would like to point out that while I was looking for single loops, I have seen photographs both in the pictures of Corolla Trier Studio, and if you look in my equipment archive at the armchair owned by Robert Fitzgerald, you will see that the handles had a few holes. So you don't have to find just this style to reproduce the original handles. They also came in from chest expanders that had multiple springs, so multiple attachments, and I will expand on that in a little bit. But first I wanted to share the next discovery. After the hand grip, I found this really, really cool Eugene Sandow 2-pound dumbbell with compression springs, so you can work your grip while working your arms. These are very functional. I love the color, but they work too. They're 2 pounds, and I use them with my students in the standing arm weight series. In addition to using them, I also use them to describe Joseph Pilates' original tensometer, because I think even teachers nowadays are a little confused as to what Joe's original tensometer was. And it was basically like a dumbbell, but the compression springs ran up and down. So exercises like pressing down on the springs on the shoulder or the head, against the abdominals, between the ankles or calves, those were the exercises that Joe gave. And I have featured pretty much all of those original exercises on open access using Bob Leakin's Mini Magic Circle, which can be purchased from Techno Pilates in Italy. So I find this to be fantastic for reproducing those exercises. I actually purchased 2 because Joe often used 2 at a time, and perhaps there was one exercise out of all of the ones that I recreated where I used the original standard size magic circle between the legs, but pretty much 99% of those exercises are done with this. So I highly recommend this if you want to authentically reproduce the tensometer exercises that Joe archived on film. But back to my hunt for these handles. I discovered that this was actually part of a Eugene Sandow physical culture appliance, basically a chest expander. It had handles like this, and the wire had multiple hooks for springs, so you could work your opening of your chest, and you'd work your grip, and you'd have the weight. So that was a pretty cool discovery that was getting me one step closer to finding these handles. Now I'd also like to share what got me even closer to those red handles. I found this Whiteley wall pull exerciser in mint condition, even though it's from 1960s. The original instruction booklet, which reminds me a lot of the instructions that Joe put together, it had this little screw that would go on the wall, and you would attach the springs to do standing arm work. But the previous owner was not allowed to put a hole in the wall. I don't know the circumstances exactly. So the wall pull exerciser from the 60s, belonging to him, are pretty much in mint condition. The springs, incidentally, are exactly the length of my armchair springs from Gratz, but they are thicker. And the handles have plastic handles, which you can also see if you look in my equipment archive at the pedipole owned by Eve Gentry. She had, or the ones that are shown in the photograph, have red plastic handles. So these are really cool. I use these as a display because they are in such beautiful condition. And then I finally found my red handles when I found, again, Whiteley brand has been the one I've been most successful searching for. The box has seen better days and the springs were in miserable condition, but the wall pull exerciser by Whiteley, and it also came with this instruction booklet. And the handles were in great condition. The red enamel is great. I use these all over the studio. I really, really love them. So I would highly recommend, as searches on the internet, to search Whiteley brand as a starter and search for wall pull exerciser if you're looking for this exactly. Whiteley also made a chest pull with red handles. Currently, at time of filming this, there is a beautiful set of red handles on a chest pull by Whiteley on Etsy right now. I think it has three holes. It was called a safety handle, much like the ones used in Carola Trier's studio. And so I hope that that's helpful. But you know, these went back as far as the 1920s. So you can search Alan Hendrickson, Eugene Sandow, Whiteley brand. You can search wall pulleys, vintage wall pulleys. You can search chest pulls, chest expanders, chest developers. And you can search wall pull exerciser by Whiteley. It took me a year to find them, so hopefully it won't take you that long, but with these tips you might have better luck and not have to wait as long. Good luck in your search and enjoy, because they really add a splash of color and history to your studio.